Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday, and there are no books in the mail for Steve, no pitter patter of little postman's feet at the door. So I thought I'd console myself with a tag, uh, but it's not much of a consolation because nobody tagged me. Nobody tags me anymore. Nobody likes me. I smell. But anyway, it was a tag that I liked the look of. I saw it on Love from CL's channel, and I think it was created by J.D. Archer. Uh, and it's the BookTube Geek Tag. 8 super geeky questions that I'm hoping will work me a little bit out of my Sunday funk. uh, so let's just get started with question number one. What is your favorite TV series? And there are so many candidates, from comedies, including old comedies like All in the Family or our Barney Miller, to modern shows, the new iteration of Battlestar Galactica, The West Wing, Star Trek. What else have I got here? Deadwood, Doctor Who, in either the old or the new version. But the number one choice for me would be sentimental. It would be The Adventures of Superman, which I loved as a little kid and used to hurry to watch, and it was the only bargaining chip that my poor mother had for me to do homework of any kind, was that you can't watch Superman until you do. And I love the show still. I absolutely love the show still. I know that's pretty hopeless, but nevertheless. Question number two. I guess a geek tag is going to be hopeless from start to finish, right? There's no such thing as a cool geek. Question number two. What is your favorite movie? Again, there are many, many candidates. Most of them following along a certain pattern. There's Lawrence of Arabia, there's Ben-Hur, there's Beckett, there's Anne of a Thousand Days, there's Lady Jane, there's A Man for All Seasons. And these are all historical, mostly all Tudor movies. But my favorite movie of all time fits that pattern, but a little bit earlier, is The Lion in Winter, with Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn and Anthony Hopkins as Richard the Lionheart. I just love it. I have watched it more times than I can count. I know it by heart. I still watch it anyway. And if it shows up on Netflix, you should watch it and see what you think. Question number three. What video or computer games obsess you? None. Not one, not ever. Question number four. What cartoon do you love? Again, there are many candidates. For instance, my mind automatically goes to the classic Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny cartoons, the Bunny of Seville and all that. The classic ones, not the modern ones, but the ones that were made with such incredible artistry and wry Brooklyn wit. But also, what have I got here? There's The Simpsons, which is, not just a great cartoon, but a great comic commentary on our times. I have very little patience with the legion of people who say, "Yeah, Simpsons, it's mostly gone downhill since the first 5 minutes of the first season 50 years ago." Now, it's still hilarious. It's every episode is still hilarious. So, but for me, the number one choice, again, this is purely geeky, but you knew that when you clicked on it, is the Justice League, the cartoon of the Justice League that I remember when it was premiering, the night it was premiering, and I had it on the TV. I had a TV at the time. I was sitting there and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be awful. And instead, I was bouncing in my seat after 5 minutes, and for episode after episode and 2 seasons, it just thrilled me with how good it is. The kind of realization that a science fiction and a comic book fan doesn't get more than once or twice in a lifetime, I think. Question number 5. What's your favorite comic book? And again, the candidates they're just numberless. I've mentioned on this channel a few great runs of Marvel Comics Thor over decades. I mean, the Lee Kirby run with inks by Vince Colletta is genius. The Tales of Asgard run with inks by Vince Colletta is genius. And then later runs with John Buscema as the artist, and then Walt Simonson's epic run on Thor. Those are some of my favorite comics. Also, I have always had a sweet tooth for Superman, just Superman comics going back forever, with almost no exceptions. The mullet Superman I could have lived without. The two energy Superman I could have lived without. But for the most part, I love what writers do with him, and it's been a great grievance to me to see that character go away when DC revamped its continuity for the New 52 and gave us a younger Superman with popped Nehru collar and pips and attitude, an a-hole Superman who floats above the ground when he's talking to you, and who is basically a clueless alien with the powers of a god instead of a Midwestern boy. So it was curiously gratifying that DC decided to kill that Superman off and bring back the real Superman, even though he doesn't fit the demographic skew of the company at all. He's older, he's married, he has a kid. He's not a cool young guy. DC has compensated for that by giving us a Chinese Superman and also a Superwoman. So all of a sudden, the Superman franchise, the extended Superman franchise, has gone back to being fascinating all over again. So, so there's that. There's Superman, and also there's The Authority, a comic called The Authority. Some of you comic fans will know it. It's not Marvel and it's not DC, or I guess it's DC now. But it's a team of counterculture superheroes that. The first 12 or so issues were thrillingly good. The writer and artist started to repeat themselves, but that first arc was really, really good. And also Hellboy, who I've mentioned on this channel before, Mike Mignola's signature character Hellboy. But for me, the number one comic would be the Legion of Superheroes, which is kind of an ironic answer now, since the Legion of Superheroes is as far into limbo as any comic creation can get. There's no Legion of Superhero comic book at the moment, but worse than that, there's no DC Comics who is the company that owns it, and there's from DC Comics no announcement of the existence of the Legion. The whole thing is we don't have any idea what it is. This grand, massive continuity of 55 years. We don't have any idea what's going to become of that. Certainly, I can tell you for sure, if DC relaunches the Legion sometime in 2017, it will be a relaunch that is completely ignorant of that history. That history will be wiped out in favor of something new and probably disastrously stupid. So I favorite comic in this case would be a museum thing, because it would be a comic from the past that started and ended in the past. The Legion of Superheroes in the past. Which it's a, for those of you who don't know, not that you're going to care, it's a team of teenage superheroes from the 30th and 31st century who band together to fight injustice in the galaxy, just as the legendary heroes of the distant past did. And when they're thinking legendary heroes of the distant past, they're thinking of the Justice League. And I loved it from the very beginning. But let's see, I can make a whole video about that. We know about that now, do we? Question number 6. Have you ever been to a geeky convention? BookTube, yes, I have. In fact, I was going to geeky conventions before they were called that. I was going to the very earliest geeky conventions of any kind whatsoever. Star Trek conventions. While the show was still on the air. And we had fun. We had lots of fun. With beer in hotel rooms and no idea what we were doing. And I went to some later conventions when they were bigger, when there were hundreds and then thousands of people in attendance, and it was fun in a way. But those old days, when nobody knew the rules, when none of us knew, when we had to face together, just a couple of dozen people in a room had to face together the possibility that our favorite show would be canceled, no matter what we did. And then what happens? At the time, there was no thought. Nobody had any thought of, if it's canceled, it's gone. That's it. It doesn't come back to TV, and no one had any thought of a movie. And had you gone back in time We're going backwards in time. If you had gone back in time to one of those hotel rooms and told us all that $1 billion franchise would extend from this plywood set thing that we loved so much, the true believers would have said that's incredible, but most of us would have thought that was crazy. But those are the conventions that I've gone to. Yes, I came very close to going to Comic-Con one year in New York, but at the last minute it seemed like a little bit Jonestowny to me, so I didn't do it. And now I regret that. Now I think I would like to go to Comic-Con. Maybe in the future a bunch of us can go. Wouldn't that be fun? Oh. Or we could go to a BookTube convention. Are there even BookTube conventions? That would be a lot of fun to do. Anyway, let's see here. Question number 7. What place have you visited that brought out your inner geek? The first thing that came to mind was a shop here in Boston, actually across the river in Cambridge, called the Million Year Picnic, which was a comic book shop. That was, in its old incarnation, had a fire disastrously, and almost a lot of stuff was lost. But in its old incarnation, it was crammed to the rafters with stuff. I don't know how it ever made money. I don't know how it ever paid its rent. But the old Million Year Picnic, if you heard on the grapevine that some piece of incunabula, some weird little publisher was doing some little comic book related thing, you could be sure that when Wednesday came around, they would have a copy at Million Year Picnic. More than one copy sometimes. It was. I should go back to the shop now. I was heartbroken when they had their fire. This was 30 years ago, and I don't think I've ever been back to see if, I'm sure that the new shop is bright and clean and well ordered and has, shop clerks that know how to do a return on the computer but don't know anything about Dreadstar. and that maybe that's okay. I just, in my mind, I think of the old Million Year Picnic as the uber geeky place to be. Although a lot of New Yorkers that I know think the same thing about the old Forbidden Planet. So I guess it's regional. And question number 8, the last question. What would make your geeky dreams come true? I have a lot of geeky dreams. So I like, for instance, computer technology, scanning technology, CGI technology, and facial recognition and software, body recognition software. All of that is coming together too slow for me and too unimaginatively. And I think about what would happen if you brought all of those things together with energy and imagination. And I can tell you one thing that would happen, and it would make my day. You could meld all of those things together, and all of a sudden it would become possible to have a Katharine Hepburn movie. A new Katharine Hepburn movie. A new John Wayne movie. Imagine one of these stupid rom-coms where the parents are all pasteboard morons because the writers don't have anyone to write for or have no example of how that role can be done. Imagine if you had one of those movies and when the second act scene happened where the parents are introduced, it was Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. I would feel sorry for some of our young stars trying to hold a candle to that. Only it would mean divorcing movies from actors. And the technology exists now to do that. You could do a John Wayne movie, a new John Wayne movie. I guess I imagine a lot of people in Hollywood consider that the absolute sacrilege. I mean, what would the Marvel superheroes are all the rage now. What would you do if you could have a Punisher movie that starred a 31-year-old Robert De Niro? And then again, there's also the law. What would the law have to say about this? I mean, does an 80-year-old Robert De Niro have any say over what a 30-year-old image of Robert De Niro does? Does he get money for it? Or is it free? Same thing with, somebody like Robert Duvall. Imagine him from when he was 50. If you made a movie starring the 50-year-old Robert Duvall, even if you weren't being opportunistic, if you said he's the perfect person for the role, well, it's not him anymore. Does he get money? If you don't need him, if your voice recognition software can produce his voice, if your CGI can produce his movements and his body and his facial recognition, that's a geeky dream that borders on a geeky nightmare. I would love to see Hollywood start to play around with that much more than they have. But as far as realistic geeky dreams go, they're all adaptations. I would love a great, intelligent, non-cynical, optimistic adaptation of Star Trek, of the original Star Trek. I would love something that was as good an adaptation of Star Trek as the new iteration of Battlestar Galactica was an adaptation of the old show. In fact, much better, because the original Star Trek has lots of merit. Something that captures the optimism, the spirit of adventure, but that feels real. The starships feel big and real. The service feels real. The aliens feel real. The sense of boldly going where no one has gone before, to capture that in a new adaptation. Oh, what I wouldn't give for that. I have, if you needed me to say it, I have no hope whatsoever that the forthcoming adaptation will be that. Just because the studio won't allow it to happen. They've had their hands in the cookie jar for so long, adulterating their product. It's a miracle if you get even one good scene in a Star Trek production, much less a whole good production. And, the same thing is true for Superman. My favorite comic book character, Superman. I would love a great adaptation of Superman. Funny, optimistic, edge of your seat, action-packed. I would love all of that. And instead, we've had year after year, one behemoth movie after another, each one worse than the one before it. And I, unfortunately, include the Christopher Reeve movie. Those movies, of course, the third and fourth one are embarrassments. The second one is kind of an embarrassment. But even the first one, Superman can't turn the Earth counterclockwise to turn back time. And there was so much that was wrong with that. No, and the later movies, forget about it. But and I don't understand the reason why this isn't possible, because the best, most creative comic book adaptations are happening on the small screen. And forever the thinking was, well, you're never going to see that for the small screen because the movie studios have too much money bound up in them being big screen productions. So you're never going to see a Batman TV series anymore. You might see Gotham, where Batman is a kid. You're never going to see a Superman TV series. You might see Smallville, where Superman is a boy and has no flights, no tights. He's not infringing on the movie character. But that's not true anymore. Tyler Hoechlin has become Superman for the WB's Supergirl, or the CW's, or whatever the network's called now, the TV version of Supergirl, which is quite good, special effects-wise. He is now Superman on that show. Not for a tiny blink-and-you-miss-it guest star, but just as a character in the show. So if that's true, and he's a funny, capable actor with a lot of screen presence, why not just make a Superman show? And there you go. Then you don't have to worry about these giant elephantine movie productions anymore. How I would love that. To make a Superman show and give us the Parasite and the Prankster and Lex Luthor and General Zod, all reimagined by these great inventive writers that are doing the TV shows. I would love that, and I don't see why it's not possible. But when it comes to my number one geeky dream come true, I've already mentioned it. It would be a live adaptation of the Legion of Superheroes, full of the hottest young teen actors and actresses that are out there, full of the wonderful bouncy counterculture complexity of the Legion, this enormous team that's always somehow yet stretched too thin, and all the different characters, the interplay of characters. To have that as a weekly TV show, or to have a Netflix order a whole season of it, what I wouldn't give to see that. The writers would go to it, would flock to it in a minute, and Legion fans would shock to it. Legion fans are the most devoted comics fans of them all, and right now we have nothing on which to attach our devotion. We don't have a cartoon, as bad as a cartoon was. At least it was something. We don't have a comic book. We don't have anything, and I would love that. But anyway, it just says something, I think, about my inner geek that this is my longest video ever. But anyway, all that's left is for me to tag people. I'm finally done geeking out. And I tag, insert literary pun here, definitely. I tag MegaManChiefFan, because I think we share geekhood in common. I tag Britta Bohler, mainly on the strength of her tweets, because she regularly tweets Alon Z, and that speaks of a Doctor Who geek buried not far beneath the surface. I tag uh, Jack the Bibliophile, I, and I'm leaving out a lot of people because a lot of you are geeks. I think being a booktuber and being a geek sort of go in common. So by all means, everybody do this. This is really a tag for all of us. I'm going to get back to my Sunday now, BookTube. Thank you. Sorry for the length of the video.